God's grace and peace to you all. I hope you had a wonderful time of Thanksgiving, whether or not you spent it with people you loved or people you just have dinner with once a year. No matter what it is, I hope that you have found ways to give thanks for all that is good, in spite of anything else in this world. I would invite you to join me for a moment of prayer. God, your word stands forever, even when we forget it, or we lose track of it, or we just choose to ignore it. Your word stands forever, God, no matter who is in power or how they lead. And it is you who is always calling us back to who we are created to be. When things are overwhelming, we come to seek your guidance, God. Help us understand and to see the next step ahead of us. And when things are going smoothly and all seems well, and when we think we have it all under control, remind us to seek your guidance then too, so we don't rest in our limited view and carry on unaware of the consequences we don't yet recognize. Reveal yourself, faithful God, for we have come looking, hoping to discover or rediscover what your call is for us on this day. Amen. I invite you now with a grateful heart to join in singing together.
Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place. I can feel his mighty power and his grace. I can hear the brush of angels' wings and see glory on each face. Surely the presence of the Lord is in this place.
Today's scripture lesson comes from 2 Kings chapters 22 and 23. This is talking about the reign of King Josiah, quite a ways down in the line of kings of Israel and Judah. Josiah was 8 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned for 31 years in Jerusalem. He did what was right in the sight of the Lord and walked in the way of his father David. He did not turn aside to the right or to the left. In the 18th year of King Josiah, the king sent a message to the house of the Lord saying, "Go up to the high priest and have him count the entire sum of money that has been brought into the house of the Lord. Let it be given to the head of the workers who have oversight of the house of the Lord. Let them give it to the workers who are at the house of the Lord repairing that house, so that the carpenters, the builders, the masons are all paid. And let them use it to buy timber and quarried stone and repair the house. By no account shall it be asked for them for the money how it's delivered for their hand, for they deal honestly." The high priest said to the secretary, "I found a book of the law in the house of the Lord." Then the secretary came to the king and reported it to the king. "Your servants have emptied out the money that was found in the house and delivered it to the hand of the workers who have oversight of the house of the Lord." Then the king directed that the elders of Judah and Jerusalem should be gathered to him. The king went up to the house of the Lord, with him and all the peoples of Judah and the inhabitants of Jerusalem, the priests, the prophets, and all the people, both great and small. He read in their hearing all the words from the book of the covenant that had been found in the house of the Lord. The king stood by the pillar and made a covenant before the Lord to follow the Lord, keeping the commandments, the decrees and statutes with all his heart and with all his soul, and to perform the words of the covenant that were written in this book. And then all the people too joined in that covenant. Here ends our reading from the book of 2 Kings.
When morning gilds the skies, my heart awaking cries, may Jesus Christ be praised. Alike at work and prayer, to Jesus I repair. May Jesus Christ be praised. The sadness mighty comes this day, when from the heart we sing, may Jesus Christ be praised. The eyes of darkness fear, when this voice reacheth near, may Jesus Christ be praised. Be this my life is mine, my canticle divine, may Jesus Christ be praised. Be this the eternal song, through all the ages long, may Jesus Christ be praised.
Well, we left off in Isaiah the last time we were together, and we were looking at the idea of what this ideal king, the Messiah, the one who saves the people, is. And now we've moved down a few generations beyond that. Many scholars of the Hebrew Bible will point to King Hezekiah as a fulfillment or an understanding of that ideal king there. Josiah, that we're talking about today, is several numbers down that line, but a descendant then of that king who kind of did the right thing, who followed the ways of the Lord. Most of the same issues, though, that were at the time of Isaiah that we read before through King Hezekiah and all the way down to Josiah are still in play. Assyria and Babylon are both major powers, and there's a lot of tension in the peoples on what they should do with those major powers, because they can, and hint, hint, down the road they will, wipe out Israel eventually. But they say, do we follow our God and the covenant and the people we are called to be, knowing that it will be hard in the face of all of that? With the Assyrians and Babylonians breathing down our throat, with the fact that Israel and Judah are still fighting here and there over different things, do we hold to our ideals, knowing it's going to be difficult, or do we ally with one of those greater powers and just give up our principles, what we believe in, so that we're safe? It's still a decision that we talk about very often today. Do you support someone because of what you want to get out of it, or because it's the right thing? This story, though, takes place with King Josiah. Josiah had started being king when he was 8, pretty young. And here, it's 18 years after, so he is 26-ish, something along this, and he has been ruling well for the past 18 years. It would appear across the board in the reading, because there's no mention of it, that he had done a good job. The text tells us he neither went to the right or the left. He stayed the course with what he was called to do and be. In this, he also recognizes that his probably dad and grandfather didn't do what they were supposed to do. And the temple has money but is in disrepair. There are institutions and things in the culture that are not working right because they didn't pay attention to them. And so Josiah says, we are going to get this back on track. So he says, hey, take the money from the treasury that's just sitting there. Take what's been given and repair the place. Trust the people we have there to do their job. Don't ask for the records and things. Give them the money, have them do their job. Let us restore this temple. Right? It's a good thing. The people are for it. It's good for the economy. It's good for the workers. It's good for everybody. And they go in there, and as they're repairing, fixing walls, taking care of things, they find a scroll of all things. And they wonder, what is this scroll? So the chief priest looks at it, recognizes what it is, and has the secretary run to Josiah to say, Your Highness, this is what we found. Scholars will tell us most likely that this was a chunk of Deuteronomy, the one that gives a bunch of the rules to follow that weren't being followed. Whether that is accurate or just really good storytelling, honestly, isn't the point. But it comes through, and it turns out that the people of Israel, including Josiah's dad and grandfather, for a little while at least, definitely were not doing some of these things that they were called to do in the Torah. The people are unaware. You might say they're ignorant, or you might say they're ignoring it. We don't know. It does not tell us. But once the scroll is read to Josiah and he understands what they are not doing, he takes it to heart and says, we are going to use this text, the scroll we have found, to do right by God, to do right by the people of Israel. A modern equivalent for something like this might be something strangely similar, in fact. It turns out that so often Christians love to quote some very specific parts of the Hebrew Bible, specifically the ones that support just their view. And all the while they ignore, or shall we be generous and say that they've lost the scroll on the rest of that text. And in the church world we call this then proof texting. You hold fast to certain lines and you conveniently ignore the ones that don't support your point that are in the same sentence sometimes, or even story, because it doesn't say what you want it to say. For example, many people insist that we need to have the 10 Commandments everywhere, and if we just did that, the world would be better. And yet, those same people forget that so much of the Torah relates to the care of the widow, the orphan, and the stranger in your land. It also has those lines that keep going over and over again about how we forgive debts, and we are generous with those without. And there is a tension between following some things like, oh, it's just the 10 Commandments. Yeah, I don't really care about the poor. That doesn't bother me because the 10 Commandments are what I care about, right? Josiah looks at this and says, we've been doing part, but not all, and we need to fix that. Josiah takes in this information from the scroll, this new information, and tells the people with new information then, we've got to do some change in how we do things. Can you imagine a leader who finds out new information and changes their mind and opinion? Not only does that, but also asks for advice from others on how to do it best. Josiah is just unsure on what to do. Now that he knows that they're not doing things, what do you do? So he asks the wise ones, the elders, the priests, those with experience, those who may have remembered some of these things, and says, how do we interpret and respond to God's call upon us? He and the elders wonder, have we been doing this wrong? Have we been ignoring what we're supposed to be doing because we just didn't know better? And he wants a remedy. He wants to know how to do a better job, how to grow, how to progress into a better king. He wonders as well, as likely we probably do, what do we need to do to get back on track? What is it that we can do to live more in line with the people we're supposed to be? The response that comes back from the elders and the wise and from the house of the Lord is that you do your best, while recognizing that some things in the past cannot be undone. And there are repercussions from what our ancestors did that we cannot change. We can just do our best in relating to them. So what would you do? Josiah brings all the people together and he shares this learning with them and says, like Jeremiah, I am going to make a vow very publicly to all of you, a covenant, if you will, to do what is said in this text. And the people then respond right away, well, you made a vow, but we collectively will make a covenant to follow what we have learned. A vow is a promise, as you know, to do something person to person. Often we think of vows in something like a wedding. Vows are personal. Covenants can be personal, but covenants are an agreement between a people or peoples. And it is this kind of, if you will, legally binding. It's not just, I'm going to do this. It is, I promise I will do this. Sign, seal, deliver. This idea. Because it's not individual, it is corporate. It is all the people of Israel come together and say, we together will do what it is. In essence, the people then recommit themselves, their community, everything to the relationship and the building of that relationship with God. So often we need to recommit ourselves to our relationships and maybe to higher ideals sometimes. It can be so easy in this day and age, and apparently back then, to let our principles and ideals slide little by little. I won't do this time. Next time I'll do it. And the next time, like, well, I can get away with a little bit more. And before you know it, our ideals, who we are called to be, who we want to be, starts to slide further and further apart. This vow that the people make, this recommitment and covenant they make back to the teachings of the Holy One, is a way to get back in line with that. It doesn't mean that they say, we commit to do this, and all of a sudden everything falls in place. It is a communal recognition of the hard road ahead, saying, we won't let just one of you do this for us. We will all do it together. So what do you in your life need to recommit yourself to? Are there habits, relationships that you need to recommit to so that you might live a better life? Find more fulfillment and happiness in meeting in this world? Are there ways of being in your life that have fallen away that you just need to get back to? I can't answer this for you, just myself. But I can share some wisdom from Confucius, at least, that helps and points me in that direction. Confucius wrote in the Tao, a journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. This is what Josiah helps the people do. His public vow and covenant leads the people in that first step to recommitment. He models that first step and they follow suit. As we move now, this coming week will be in the season of Advent, a time of preparation for the coming once again of the Christ child. What do you need to do to recommit yourself to the building of the kingdom of God during that time? What do you need to do to take what you have and who you are so that you might better follow in the footsteps of the one we call the Messiah? No matter what it might be, may you have the strength to take that first step, knowing that we all go with you, that we can all recommit ourselves to living more in line with the one who brings light and life to all the nations. Take that first step. May it be so with you. Amen.
Above all power, above all king, above all nature and all created things, above all wisdom and all the ways of man, you were here before the world began.
Above all kingdoms, above all thrones, above all wonders the world has ever known, above all wealth and treasures of the earth, there's no way to measure what you're worth.
Crucified and laid behind a stone, you lived to die, rejected and alone, like a rose trampled on the ground. You took the fall, thought of me above all. Above all power, above all king, above all nature and all created things, above all wisdom and all the ways of man, you were here before the world began.
Above all kingdoms, above all thrones, above all wonders the world has ever known, above all wealth and treasures of the earth. There's no way to measure what you're worth.
Crucified and laid behind the stone, you lived to die, rejected and alone, like a rose trampled on the ground. You took the fall and thought of me. Crucified and laid behind the stone, you lived to die, rejected and alone, like a rose trampled on the ground. You took the fall and thought of me. Above all, like a rose trampled on the ground, you took the fall and thought of me. Above all.
Let us pray. Holy God, we give you thanks for your eternal word, leading us into life. We are grateful for your continued speaking, your insistence on seeking us, even when we are not seeking you. For your call that echoes through the centuries of texts and voices and lives that have been lived in your name and for your glory. We lift up our gratitude for those today who lead us well, who do the best they can for the greater good, who recognize their flaws and seek to do better for us all. We ask for your blessing of clear minds, of open hearts, of humility to know that we are not the ultimate authorities. Help them and us. Give us compassion to guide in serving the community and the communities that we are all called to be a part of and to lead. We lift up our gratitude and our prayers today for those whose calling is to speak hard truths, that they may have the courage to communicate what must be said, even to those who do not want to hear it. And we pray, too, that we might have the courage to hear from them when they speak to us in those situations. We lift up our prayers today for this world that so often feels beyond repair. We hardly even know what to ask, and so we simply lay it all before you, seeking your counsel, your healing, and your grace, God. There is so much violence, hate, injustice, and greed, so much damage that has been done to your creation and to your beloved community, so much need, and so little will or energy to do what is right. Speak your promise into this place once again and give us the faith to live into the hope of your kingdom, though it feels far off. Give us the strength and courage, God, to take that first step. Gather us all together in faith, hope, and love. Take us from our desire to wait for a hero to solve it all, and instead fill us with commitment. Fill us with the commitment to your way of abundant life, even now, God. We ask these things in the name of the one who lives and reigns with you, the one who taught us to pray, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our debts, as we forgive our debtors. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. Thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen.
For his gifts to every
And now, my friends, you have a choice to make. You alone can make a vow to do better, to follow more closely with what we've been taught, with the ways that we are led by God. Or we together can recommit and recovenant ourselves to doing the work that God has called us to do. Let us all take that first step together, especially in this coming season of Advent, to prepare ourselves to do the hard work of being ready to do what God has called us to do and be who God has called us to be. Let us take that first step together. Go in peace and serve the Lord. Amen.